Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be going into a pretty heavy topic,
Yeah,
the case of Takahiro Shiraishi.
the Twitter killer.
That's right, the Twitter killer. And we're going to be going through excerpts from his Wikipedia page just to get kind of a baseline of the facts straight.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think what we really want to get at with this deep dive is how this case reflects on the dark side of human nature.
Yeah, and particularly how it plays out online. I mean,
Right.
this is a case very much of the social media age.
Absolutely. And how, really anybody can be a victim
Right.
of these kinds of things. I mean, So I think it's important for us as we go through this to not just focus on the gruesome details,
Yes.
but try to understand, what this case can teach us.
What can we learn from it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What can we learn from this case? So to start off, who was Takahiro Shiraishi? On the surface, he seemed like a pretty ordinary guy, born in 1990, lived in Zama, Japan.
Right. An average guy in many ways.
Yeah. But his work history before the crimes is where things start to get a little bit
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, because, he had a job that most people probably haven't even heard of. He was a scout for the sex industry.
Right.
So basically, his job was to lure young women into prostitution.
Wow.
Now, obviously, this is not an excuse for his actions later on.
Yeah.
But it is vital context because
that.
this kind of work, you can imagine, exposes you to a very dark side of society and of human nature.
Right. Right.
And it might have normalized some of these behaviors or desensitized him to the harm that he was causing.
Totally. And I think that normalization is even more evident when you look at the nature of the crimes themselves. So between August and October of 2017,
In just a couple of months.
yeah, just 2 months, Shiraishi murdered 9 people.
9 people.
And his victims weren't random.
No, most of them were young women, tragically,
Yeah.
including 3 high school girls.
Oh, my gosh.
And the way he found them is what gives him his nickname. He used Twitter to target people who were expressing suicidal thoughts.
So he was seeking out the most vulnerable.
The most vulnerable people.
Wow.
People who were already in immense pain.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And how did he, what did he do?
Well, he would engage with them online, offer them support,
Uh,
pretend to empathize with their situation.
That's my gosh.
And then he would twist that into an opportunity
Wow.
to suggest that he could help them die.
No way.
Watch them commit suicide or even die alongside them.
Oh my gosh.
It's really chilling to think about.
It's very premeditated. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It's a complete exploitation of their vulnerability for his own
Dark desires.
dark desires, exactly.
It's crazy to me that someone would exploit someone's desire to end their life, to further their own.
Right. It's almost
Yeah.
unimaginable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good, though, that the investigation did lead to his arrest, but it was a strange path to get there.
Yeah, it really highlights, I think, the power, but also the limitations of citizen investigation.
In the digital age.
Yeah.
Totally. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, a missing woman's brother, along with a woman named Yumi, they became suspicious of Shiraishi.
Okay.
They contacted him undercover. They even set up a fake appointment.
Wow.
And it was their persistence that really brought him to the attention of the police.
That's incredible. It makes you wonder if they hadn't done that, would there have been more victims?
Absolutely.
It's scary to think about.
It is, and it shows, how important it can be for individuals to sometimes take things into their own hands.
Especially when official channels maybe aren't doing enough or haven't caught on yet.
Exactly. And what the police found in Shiraishi's apartment once they got there,
I can't even imagine.
well, it was truly horrific.
I bet.
9 dismembered bodies.
Oh my God.
Body parts in cooler boxes, storage containers.
Oh my gosh.
The level of planning, the effort to conceal his crimes,
It's just,
it's both horrifying and fascinating at the same time.
I can't even imagine what it must have been like for those investigators to uncover that.
Right, just the sheer scale of it.
Oh, yeah. And the meticulous nature of it all. It's crazy.
It really raises more questions than answers.
Yeah. Like, why this method? What does dismembering the bodies, this effort to kind of erase the victims, tell us about his psychology?
Right, and why target these specific victims in the first place?
Yeah, well, he did confess to the killings, pretty quickly
He did.
and claimed that his motive was sexual, that he wanted to take advantage of their vulnerability.
Right, to act out his fantasies.
But is there more to it than that?
I think we have to assume so.
Yeah.
This kind of case, the question of motive is rarely simple.
Right.
There's likely elements of power control, maybe even sadism.
Right.
And we also can't forget the role of technology here.
Yeah.
Shiraishi wasn't lurking in some dark corner of the internet.
Yeah.
He was using a mainstream platform to
Wow.
find and manipulate his victims.
And that's what makes this so scary. Because it highlights how the same tools that we use to connect with each other and for support
Right.
can be used for such evil purposes. So let's go back to the investigation and the trial, though. What happened once Shiraishi was arrested? What was the public reaction like?
Well, I think you can imagine it was. I mean, it was a mix of horror and outrage.
Yeah.
I mean, Japan has a relatively low crime rate.
Right.
So this case really shook the nation.
Mm-hmm.
People were glued to the news.
Hmm.
They wanted to understand how something like this could happen.
Yeah, it's like, how could this happen here, in our own backyard?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as the trial unfolded, even more unsettling details came to light. I mean,
Really?
Shiraishi admitted to the killings right away, but his defense team, they didn't give up easily.
Okay.
They argued for life in prison. They claimed that he wasn't mentally competent to really understand what he had done.
So they were trying to use an insanity plea, basically.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
But the prosecution, they painted a very different picture.
Okay.
They argued that Shiraishi was a calculating predator, that his actions were completely premeditated.
Wow.
They pointed to the steps he took to cover his tracks,
Yeah.
like dismembering the bodies, using chemicals to hide the smell,
Oh my God.
as evidence that he knew exactly what he was doing and he knew the consequences.
Right. So it sounds like there were two very different narratives being presented. Was he a deeply disturbed person who needed help? Or was he just a cold-blooded killer who deserved the harshest punishment possible? What did the public think about that?
Well, public opinion was very much in favor of the death penalty.
Really?
The sheer brutality of the crimes and the fact that he preyed on such vulnerable people, it just solidified in everyone's minds that he was a monster.
Right, that there was no chance of rehabilitation or anything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He needed to be permanently removed from society.
Wow. That brings up another layer of complexity, though, because Japan's death penalty system is pretty unique.
It is.
It's very different from, say, the United States. Executions are rare. They're shrouded in secrecy. It's not something that people talk about openly very often.
And this case thrust the whole issue into the spotlight.
I bet.
It forced people to really confront their beliefs about justice and punishment.
Right, because you had to take a side. You couldn't just ignore it anymore.
Exactly. There were protests, debates on television articles, in newspapers, dissecting, is this the right punishment?
And so how did Shiraishi himself react to all of this? I mean, it's got to be intense being at the center of a national debate like that, knowing that you're facing the death penalty.
Well, throughout the trial, he remained very calm and detached.
Interesting.
He didn't really show any remorse or any strong emotion.
Wow.
And of course, this just fueled the public's anger even more.
Yeah, like, he's not even taking this seriously.
Exactly. So when the court finally announced the sentence, death by hanging Eiga, he didn't even flinch.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. And did he appeal?
He chose not to.
Really?
And this was a surprising move that sparked even more debate.
Yeah.
And some people saw it as an acceptance of responsibility,
Okay.
a sign that he was finally maybe starting to understand the enormity of what he had done.
Right.
But others saw it as just another act of control,
Oh, interesting.
like he was choosing his own death.
Right, and taking that power away from everyone else.
Exactly.
Denying anyone else the chance to intervene or to change his fate.
That's a good point. It's almost like even in death, he was still manipulating the situation, just like he did with his victims.
Yeah, it's a disturbing thought.
It is for sure.
Yeah.
So the trial